welcome everyone. Really grateful that you've turned up to this session. Lots and lots of great content here at MadFest, so appreciate you taking the time to come to this one today. My name is Phil, I work at Haleon. In terms of what I do day to day, so I work in our global consumer insights analytics team, and very simply my job is to help our community of digital marketers, about 200-300 of those around the world, to ensure that the investments that they're making in digital marketing are as efficient and effective as possible. So I've got a bit of a word salad job title, but that's ultimately what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. You may or may not have heard of Haleon, but that's probably not a massive concern for us. What's really important is you're familiar with our brands. We're one of the world's leading consumer healthcare companies, and I'm sure many of you in the room today have bought or have currently got in your bathroom or your kitchen one or more of our products up here today. As was alluded to, our journey with attention metrics is about 3, maybe a little bit more than that, years old. One of the best things about being at the company to see the transition and the separation from GSK into Haleon was the ability to look at how we engage with consumers and deliver our marketing mission, which is ultimately to build brands with humanity to drive growth and shareholder returns. A lot of the emphasis around that was putting the consumer at the heart of what we're doing and leveraging our ability to deliver deeper human understanding and competitive advantage through that. That's one of the catalysts that unlocked attention as a potential competitive advantage for us. The other one of those was the emergence of a new strategic direction with our media function, which was to rebalance the efficiency and the effectiveness that we were delivering through our media investments, both digital and offline. We recognised that actually we'd gone too far towards the efficiency side of things, delivering reach at the lowest possible cost, at the expense of quality. And again, attention metrics, attention measurement felt like an opportunity to reevaluate how we were buying media, how we were quantifying the quality of media, and make actionable decisions on top of that. So we had a mandate for change. We had 2 kind of catalysts in terms of driving that change. So a lot of us, including me, saw attention metrics as this shiny new toy, something that we'd love to get involved with. And a little bit like the kids in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, we jumped straight in without much of a plan, and we just tried everything we could. Unfortunately, it turns out when you do that and you just jump in straight first without a plan, sometimes, more often than not, things don't necessarily go to plan. So our early testing and our early utilization of attention metrics proved not to be wasteful in terms of what we learned and what we were able to deliver in terms of our own capability and our understanding. But in terms of hard business value, I think we failed in terms of how we initially started with attention metrics back in 2022. We looked at the way we could look at our historical TV data. We analysed that in terms of what the attentiveness was per the GRPs we were buying. We pushed that data back into our econometric models to run secondary models to understand, okay, what was the contribution of different attentiveness GRPs on business impact. All we really discovered was we didn't have a lot of variation in our TV GRP quality. In the US, it's a very commoditized TV market. They're buying a very prescriptive level of quality for a very standardized cost benefit. So there was no variation in the model to help us understand if increased quality drive increased effectiveness. So whilst we learned a ton, it was a bit of a fail. We ran a huge amount of A/B tests with the biggest platforms, the Googles, the Metas of this world. Again, we encountered a lot of logistical challenges, basic fundamentals about whether or not pre-bid algorithms could integrate with the DSP that we were using at the time to deliver enough scale to give us enough respondents to be able to get brand lift study results that are statistically significant. Again, lots of great learnings, but value to the business, pretty limited. So we went one step further. We started to set up sales lift studies. So we'd do geographical sales lift studies within the United Kingdom, isolating different regions of the UK, looking to activate higher levels of attention and our business as usual strategies. What did we find? Well, what we already knew. Actually, sales lift studies require a significant amount of investment, and we didn't really understand what levels of attention we needed to be driving in the higher attention cells to be able to drive the significant lifts in sales and also conversion rate that we were expecting. So, sounds like a familiar story, but we ran some great tests, some great experiments, but unfortunately the returns to the business were relatively nominal. So we went back to the drawing board. We sat down with our agency partners, publicists, and we had a conversation about, okay, what is it we're lacking here in terms of building a proper plan? And it turns out we didn't actually know or recognize if we actually had an attention problem in the first place. We had just run into this assuming that we had an attention problem. We just assumed the worst case scenario, that we must be under-delivering in attention because we've had an efficiency focus in the past. So we engaged with the team at Lumen. We signed a large scope of work to assess the historical and rolling attention in 10 of our biggest markets in terms of investment. We prioritised the channels and platforms that were most important to us, so YouTube, DV360 and Meta, and we gave the business and our agency partners one single source of truth when it came to what is our current levels of attention, what is the headroom for growth in terms of attention that we can be striving for versus benchmarks and versus our peer set. We built out a learning agenda that was very specifically focused on two key elements. Does incremental attention in our media investments drive business returns incrementally to what the cost of that incremental attention is? And also, if that is true, how do we actually acquire that attention at the most cost-efficient rate, recognizing there are different shapes of attention and different ways that you can achieve that? We had specific hypotheses for TV and digital, and then within the digital space, the open marketplace and also the walled gardens as well. I alluded to some of the measurement strategies that we use there to kind of prove our point. In addition to that, we work very closely with publicists to start embedding attention-based planning principles into our media planning across those 10 markets. So recognizing that different platforms have different attention shapes and profiles. What were the objectives of those campaigns? How much attention did we think we need versus what we were currently delivering today? How did we ensure that we understood the elasticity of different platforms, which is some of the work that Karen Nelson-Field has driven over the number of years, going, you will get a baseline level of attention from a media platform, but how can you drive it further with creativity as well? And here's some illustrative data to how we very simply did that with markets. We just moved money around the table. We moved money between platforms. We recognized that YouTube was one of our strongest platforms in terms of attention. Meta, unfortunately, was kind of at the sore end of that conversation because they typically deliver less attention, and also within online video and display we made optimizations as well. And you can see how very simply, just by moving money around the media plan, you can certainly improve your attention relatively significantly without needing to go into a significant amount of the weeds in the platforms themselves. So we had momentum, we had stakeholders bought in and engaged and really interested in what we were doing. And we've just built on that. So we've built on that momentum. So this is our third year of iterating our learning agenda. We have a very specific question now, which has evolved from what we used to have, which is not just does attention drive incremental business returns, but what levels of attention do our brands require based on the jobs to be done that they have? Again, work in the industry will tell you that very recognized brands will need less attention to deliver the same level of ad recall that lesser known brands will. It's just common sense, common marketing sense. But are we planning based on that, based on some of our huge brands such as Sensodyne and Centrum versus our lesser known brands as Otrivin and Nicotinell? We've broken that down by YouTube, by Meta, by the open web to understand the nuances within those as well. And we've also started to educate our markets on where are you on the journey as to how should you lean into this agenda, because it can become very complicated very quickly and you can get very overwhelmed. So if you're like a nascent market who's only just starting out, what are the things that you should be doing first versus a very sophisticated market such as the US, for example? We've had to work very hard to get engagement and buy-in from the partners. If any of you are in the room today, I'm sure this is a very different picture to it was in 2022, but they really didn't want to lean into this. They were very hesitant to talk about attention. Again, with the emergence of AI and the algorithms that the platforms have within their own control, they don't want people coming in and lifting a lid and saying, actually, this is what attention you're getting. They just want the algorithms to optimize towards outcomes. So we've had to work very hard to bring them in and build specific learning agendas and plans around these different partners that you'll see some of the evidence of in a second. However, you're asking, you still haven't shown me any value, which is exactly what the procurement team were asking for, and also the heads of marketing. Well, don't worry, we got there. So what we were able to do by having a baseline of our attention data with Lumen was then go back in a number of months and check what progress we've been making in terms of increasing the attention, specifically APM in the case of Lumen, versus those baselines. So you'll see in half of our markets, and varying degrees by platform, we were able to increase attentiveness of our media investments over time. And this wasn't done at significantly incremental cost either. I think there's a common misconception that if you buy attention, you'll have to spend 2x, 3x, 4x to get it. That's not the case. any of the research will tell you that digital media is not priced commensurately to the quality that you're getting. So you don't have to 2-3x your spend on TV. That might be a different conversation entirely, but in digital we didn't find that to be the case. What we did with that data is then we went back into our MMMs. So we had a look at, okay, so as part of the overall work that the brand team is doing on brands, specifically calling out Germany here as one of our best markets in terms of improving attention, and lots of other activities that they were doing was incredibly impressive improvements in their ROI and effectiveness, which was in part contributed to by the focus that they put on attention. There was video neutral planning in there was obviously creative effectiveness, there was lots of things going on behind the scenes. So by all means, this is not to say that just by doing attention we delivered these results, but it certainly contributed, and it was hard to ignore that kind of level of improvement. We were doing it across the whole media supply chain as well. So we were working not just with Lumen, but we were working with Adelaide as well. We did a study in the US where we took Amazon performance data. We correlated that back to attention levels, so their AU metric, to show that certain levels of AU drove different performance by KPI. So whether that's brand KPI such as ad recall, consideration, purchase, what levels of AU you needed to reach, and where was the point of diminishing return, and also on sales as well. We set up tests with Meta against all of their advice. We moved away from automatic placements into selecting specific placements that we wanted to choose, and we showed that across multiple markets in Middle East Africa and Southeast Asia, Taiwan, when you take control of your placement selection, you get better results. Again, this is not conclusive evidence, but certainly in our own test, we saw that when we take control and remove the AI element, when we want to drive upper funnel objectives, we should be in control of what we're doing. And we continue to work with T-Vision on the TV element, working in the UK to drive incremental gains in terms of our attention versus Colgate and other competitors in the UK, which again has contributed to really impressive performance of SenseTime from TV in that market. More recently, so I presented a lot of this stuff in London, MadFest and London last year, but these are new kind of things that have come out since then. So we worked with Meta and Lumen on a study which was cross-advertiser, where we looked at the relationship between time in view and outcomes, again, specifically outcomes measured by brand lift studies. And you can see here how you can now really talk to marketers about the value of attention elasticity on a platform like Meta or other social environments like TikTok. If you know that you're only going to get 1.5 seconds or 2 seconds at the bare minimum, you have to work really hard with your creativity to drive further attention than that, because what you're going to get BAU from the platform, just because of the nature of how consumers interact, is around that 1.5 seconds. The inflection point for us in terms of brand choice, obviously you can see, is a greater duration of time than that. We did some work with Advil in the US, again with Lumen, where we demonstrated that at, can't give you the number, sorry, secret source, at a certain level of APM, we see significant improvements in all of the metrics related to sales, conversion rate, cost per conversion, and omni-channel ROAS as well. So now we're able to go back to the teams and say, okay, how can we, at a bare minimum, plan for this level of attention? Which formats, which audiences, where can we find this level of attention in the plan? Because we know from the data that is where we see the incremental benefits. So that's a lot of what we have done. What are we doing this year? So we're scaling, which is what you always want to see from a kind of proof of concept. We've now expanded our tracking to 47 markets. We're now covering 7 platforms, so that's Meta, YouTube, DV360, in addition to TikTok, Amazon, Trade Desk, and Microsoft. We are laser focused on attention thresholds. We really want to understand what those thresholds are by brand, by platform, to be able to make the right decisions about where we put our money for what types of objectives we get. And we want to democratize this data because, again, it's really, really valuable data, but it's only valuable if you know what to do with it and you have it to hand and you can have the conversations with your agency partners. So, again, we're going to be educating all of our media teams on how to use this data, how to access it, and what to do with it. We have that scheduled in for later in March. We're going to have a big call and really get people engaged because, again, it's been centre of excellence stuff for the majority of time so far. So, 3 years on, where am I? I'm happy. Yeah, I'm really happy. I had some bad times, but I've come out the other side of it really positive about what attention can do and the value it can drive. And I think if there's anything you should take away from it today is start testing, understand where you are today. Don't jump in with both feet, not knowing what your kind of position is when it comes to attention. Don't assume viewability equals attention. Definitely not. Kind of engage with the partners out there. Think about it beyond visual as well. A huge amount of opportunity for audio stimuli as well, which the partners need to kind of get closer to across the board. It's not about maximizing attention. It should never be about that. It's about what is the right level of attention for your brand, for the problem you're trying to solve with the consumer, because otherwise you'll just be paying for stuff you don't need and incentivizing probably bad actors to just give you lots and lots of duration when actually you don't need it. And where we're now moving to as well is we're looking at the relationship between emissions and carbon emissions from our media activations and also attention. So by using attention, how can we correlate that with lesser emissions? And it's a win-win scenario. Consumer sees less intrusive advertising, we get the attention we need, and it's net positive for the planet in terms of making reduction anyway. So that's what we're doing. Hope that's inspirational, educational, helpful. Appreciate your audience today. Been great. Thank you very much.